very welcome onto episode 12 of the Angus to the Fore podcast. On this week's episode, Eoin chats to Shane Leane from Progessive Genetics. They discuss Shane's farm at home, his job with Progessive Genetics, the direction of the AI industry, sex semen, the dairy beef index, the Angus breed, and much more. This podcast is part of our entry into the Certified Irish Angus Schools competition, sponsored by ABP and Keepack. We are now one of 5 finalists in the competition and have received our 5 Irish Angus calves. To follow our project to date, access to our innovative bull finder, videos, new podcast episodes, news and much more, visit angustothefore.com. A reminder that you can now watch this episode in full video on Spotify and also on YouTube. Now for Eoin's chat with Shane.
Hi Shane, thanks very much for joining me here on the podcast. I suppose, just Shane, firstly, could you introduce yourself for us?
Yeah, so look, thanks for inviting me on, and Shane. So thank you very much. So my name is Shane Leane. I'm working with Progessive Genetics. We're an AI company. We're a service provider in terms of we provide AI and dairy and beef genetics, and also we provide milk recording and farm software as well. So I suppose I'm with Progressive the last 7 years. Prior to that, I would have worked with Chagas. I was managing a farm with Chagas, the Curtains Research Farm down in Moore Park, where I was involved in different trials and the running of the farm from a day-to-day operational point of view. But I suppose prior to that, then I would have done a PhD in fertility and nutrition around dairy cows, and it kind of gave me a good insight into the theory and the research about what can influence production from a reproductive point of view and also from a performance point of view as well. So it was a good learning curve. So it was very interesting. I suppose prior to that, then I suppose where the main interest came in agriculture, I grew up in County Kerry. I'm originally from North Kerry, and I suppose I had an uncle in North Kildare who was dairy farming along my father. So that's where the interest kind of came in terms of farming. I would have travelled up to North Kildare, had any opportunity and chance I got. They were a mixed enterprise when I was growing up. They were farming beef and dairy. And I suppose the way the economics were working out, the pursuit was after the dairy side more so than the beef. So the switch was decided, and they very much pursued the expansion of dairy, and restricted by quotas along the way. But I suppose when the quotas were lifted in 2015, it really opened up the opportunity to expand and to drive on as well. So, I was part of that journey with them, and it gave me great insight into the dairy industry, and it gave me great insight into the dairy expansion and how to go about it. So at that time, we were milking in a 6-unit parlour, milking about 60, 70 cows, and it taken a bit of time. Where now they're milking in a 20-unit herringbone parlour and milking 225 cows in probably less time as well. So it just demonstrates the changes that have happened in a short space of time, and where things have gone to. So that's kind of me in a nutshell in terms of where I've been and what I've done and what I've ended up with to date.
Yeah, very good. And I suppose going back to your interest in it, and then as you say, you went on to do a PhD. Like leaving school, were you always set on agriculture or some route in it, and then where did you go on to study, Shane?
Yeah, so I would say I was always interested in it. Coming from North Kerry, it was a rural enough area, surrounded by dairy farms and beef farms as well, to be fair. So there wasn't too many days that you didn't see some sort of activity related to agriculture. And I suppose that connection then with my relations on the farming really ingrained it in me to follow agriculture. So I really had a good understanding of it from a young age, and I also had a good interest in it from a young age, which nothing ever else appealed to me to go after, whether it was engineering or construction or that. It was agriculture from day one. So that led me to, when I finished school, I went to Clonakilty. I suppose at that time I was very much set on managing a farm, and I wanted to get actually back into farming, and I didn't have a home farm, so I hadn't that opportunity. So I felt that the next step would be to go to Clonakilty, get some practical experience, and do the 2-year course down there, and that would lead me into going farming, and that was my plan. Plans don't always work out that way. I got, I suppose, an interest into the agricultural science when I started in my course down there, and I went on and did 3 additional years in UCD. Prior to the UCD, actually, I traveled to New Zealand where I worked on a dairy farm over there, different scale, but very interesting to see the way things are done on the other side of the world. Very similar to Ireland, but just done at a different scale, to be fair. But yeah, I did them 3 years in UCD. Then I came out with my animal and crop production undergraduate. And from there, then I did a master's in sustainable agriculture and rural development. It was kind of an add-on, more of a step up. Didn't know where I wanted to go, whether it was further education or get into industry. So I took that year to kind of gather my thoughts. And then at the end of that master's, the PhD actually showed itself. So prior to that, I had actually done an AI course, and I was doing a DIY AI at home, and also I had done the scanning course, so I was actually scanning on the road as well. So I had an interest in fertility and reproduction in cows, and that then, when the opportunity came on the PhD, I jumped at it, and yeah, the rest is kind of history. Yeah.
So then, within your current job in Progressive Genetics, Shane, could you kind of explain your role and I suppose what work you carry out in it?
Yeah, so it's a diverse range of jobs, to be fair. So when I started off at Progressive, I was actively selling and advising farmers on genetics and the right genetics to use in their dairy systems in particular. And I suppose as time has moved on, I kind of moved up along the ladder, and I suppose I'm in more of a technical manager role now, where I'm supporting and advising farmers, our sales team, and our technicians they're actively working across the country. And also I'm involved in, I suppose, the marketing and the product development of our genetics that come from when we identify the calves in the field to the procurement of them, to bring them right through, and everything that's involved in marketing them animals in our catalogs and on social media and so on. So there's a diverse range there from the genetic side, but something that's very interesting. I'm also very involved in the milk recording service, in providing that service to the farmers across the Progressive Genetics area, and that goes from planning and implementing, I suppose, new cells, which we refer to as new EDOI cells, which are delivering and dropping meters, to new manual recorders to deal with the growth in milk recording, and also to provide a good service to farmers. So there's a number of jobs I'm responsible for, and look at the end game, it's back to the farmer. We're a service provider. We're there to benefit the farmer in terms of what he or she wants from a genetics point of view and from a milk recording point of view. So it all comes back to whatever we do, it's to benefit the farmer at the end of the day.
So I suppose a lot of your job involves confronting farmers, advising farmers. Like, I suppose, can you get a sense of, say, the direction of the Irish AI industry? From that perspective, like there's I suppose the like of sex semen and dairy beef kind of scenarios that you're looking into on different farms, different I suppose ways of AI in cows, ways of carrying out your breeding program. But what is there trends visible, Shane?
Yeah, so there definitely is, to be fair. Things have changed a lot over the last number of years. As I said earlier, when quotas left in 2015, there was a massive increase in dairy in Ireland, and the expansion really, drove on. And we've seen a shift in terms of overall demands on high EBI animals and even high genetic merit sires for breeding programs and that. So there has been a shift. As of late, then with the, I suppose, rules and regulations, we have seen that kind of, I suppose, level out a little bit, and we aren't seeing the same level of expansion that was there in prior years. Now, what we are seeing is that the dairy industry is stabilizing. The expansion has reduced, and now people are actually content in terms of the numbers they have. So basically, they're refining their breeding policy and breeding plans to not to have surplus stock on farm. And the way they're looking at things now is that they identify the number of replacements they need to replace the herd each year, and they're utilizing sex semen in that equation to generate that next generation of offspring to provide them replacements. And then the remainder of the herd is where we're seeing the biggest changes. We're seeing a massive shift in dairy beef being used on the remainder of the herd. And that's a positive, because we're seeing the demands from the industry, the agri industry, I suppose, to have a more saleable calf and a better quality calf from the dairy farmer. And we are seeing that real keen interest in high quality dairy beef sires now. So where we were promoting and selling, I suppose, a lot more dairy. Now that shift has happened, and we're now promoting and selling a lot more dairy beef, in particular Angus and other breeds as well. But there is a massive shift or a massive change in the industry, but it's one that is positive, and I think it has the best interest of the industry at heart in terms of delivering a saleable calf and better quality stock for the industry to drive on as well. So it's been a changing time over the last, I suppose, 2 or 3 years.
And I suppose going with supply and demand sort of a concept. Is that something you have to follow then with the dairy beef? Like, obviously, is it fair to say you'd have more, say, beef bulls in, as you say, the like of Angus and similar breeds than you would have had back in 2015 when dairy was mostly used?
Yeah. So we're starting to see that shift in our studs. We're starting to see the scales tipping a little bit in terms of the amount of beef sires that we actually have versus the dairy sires. Still have a large offering of both. To be fair, it's probably around the 45% towards beef now. But it's the key thing from our perspective is to cater for everyone's needs, whether you're a dairy farmer or just dairy beef. So we look at things as not putting ourselves in one in particular market, is that we provide for all markets for our shareholders. So it's a complex situation, but it's something that we're looking at every day in terms of the direction of the demands from farmers, and that's a lot of my job is when I'm talking to farmers is trying to get an insight into the direction that they're going from their business perspective, and that thing gives us the guidance in terms of where we need to be going from Progressive Genetics perspective as well. So it's there's ongoing conversations there happening throughout the season with farmers and our sales team and technicians in terms of what are the changes that are in the field, what are farmers looking for, and what potentially will they be looking for in 5 years' time as well. So, for us to get ahead of the game, we need to be thinking at least 5 years ahead to put them plans in place now to have the right quality bulls or have the correct sires available for the farmer in 5 years. So it's there's definitely changes happening, to be fair.
Very good. I suppose a lot of airtime on the quality of beef calf or dairy herd is producing at the minute. Like, can you see, you're speaking to dairy farmers on the ground, like, do you think they're placing more emphasis on using a high merit beef sire currently?
Yeah, definitely. It's massive shift over the last 2 years in particular. Prior to that, I suppose, historically, as I said earlier, we use it used to be a 12-week breeding season, and the first 6 weeks would be dairy sires only, and in the after 6 weeks, you're looking at the shift to dairy beef, or even the stock bull will be introduced after that in some cases. But what we're seeing now is a more emphasis on the herd selection in terms of I want to identify my elite dairy cows in the herd, and I want to use sex semen on them sires to produce my next generation of replacements. And then the remainder of the cows, irrespective if they need to be AI in the first 6 weeks or the last 6 weeks, they're being bred for dairy beef. So we're seeing that farmers are now looking at the dairy beef in a different way. They used to traditionally look at it in terms of easy calving, short gestation, which is still very, very important to them. But gestation lesser important when you're starting dairy beef usage at the start of the breeding season. But still, it is topic conversation. They want easy calving from a dairy farmer's perspective. They don't want hassle and calving difficulties. They want their cow to calve easily, and they want that cow to get up and to start producing milk as quickly as possible. So they don't want to jeopardize that in any way at all. So definitely gestation calving difficulty is the priority. But now what we have seen is guys are starting to look at the quality of the beef sire in terms of the carcass conformation and the carcass quality in terms of the kilos of carcass that sire is particularly bringing. And that is a good thing, because we're all aware of the CBV, the commercial beef value that was launched earlier this year. And that is to help buyers identify these high CBV calves that will return a higher margin to their pocket. So it's important that from the dairy farmer's perspective, that they're focusing on a higher quality calf to give that finisher that chance of returning a higher margin as well. So it's a team effort, to be fair, but we definitely have seen a major shift. And we see it among our Anguses. The day of just looking for the easy calving short gestation has moved on. They're now looking for the calving to gestation and the quality and conformation in the sire as well. So it's a good thing, as I said, from an industry perspective. That's what we want to see. We want to see farmers engaging in it. And I suppose we would also see a diverse range of sires being used early on, not just Angus or Hereford, which are your traditional breeds, but we're starting to see an increase in Belgian Blue and British Blue, and also we're starting to see an increase in Charlies and Limousin as well. So it shows that there is an interest from the farmer to add a bit of diversity in terms of the beef breeds that they use, and they're using them earlier in the season, which they're not as concerned about gestation. But it's good to see it, and I think it's a positive from the dairy industry perspective.
I suppose when you say a dairy farmer generally will go in with their sex semen or conventional, dairy AI to produce their replacements, and the latter half will be beef or even the lower index cows from day one go as beef. Is the debate still very much there between using sex semen and conventional semen? If a farmer wants a 20-25% replacement rate, I suppose one answer is they can get that whole say 25% with sex semen, and the other is they can double it to 50% conventional, and they will have to deal with the problems of the Frisian bulls. But I suppose, is there an advantage there with maybe higher conception? Does cost play into it? Like, is there one of them modules that really is the strongest choice at the minute?
Yeah, so it comes down to the individual situation and the individual farms. And I suppose in Ireland, because of the way we're set up in terms of the grass-based system, we have a massive emphasis on fertility. And 6-week calving rate is the driving force behind, I suppose, profitability in the majority of grass-based systems. So that is priority number one for the farmer. So what I say to each farmer when I go in and look at their system in terms of using sex semen or using conventional semen, it's if they have an outlet for their calves, and that is a stable and secure outlet for the next couple of years, which a lot of farmers do have, to be fair. Some farmers are finishing their Frisian bull calves, which is okay. But I think conventional semen still plays a massive role in that, where in cases that they're struggling to offload their calves and they want to, add value to their calf crop by using beef sires, sex semen becomes part of the equation. Sex semen is a higher cost product, which has to be factored in for the system as well. And then again, conception rates, any research that has been done, published research shows that there is that 7% difference in terms of conception rates between sex and conventional straws. So that has a major impact on 6-week calving rate and conception rates for the dairy business. So there's a number of factors, but I suppose it starts off when I go to a farm. It's a conversation around, have you an outlet for your calves? If you have, well, then we have to weigh up, do we need to use sex semen in this equation? And a lot of farmers are still using conventional semen and achieving excellent conception rates and still achieving, by being able to get their calves away. So, sex semen is definitely part of the equation in a lot of farms from this season in particular. But the way I would see it is that, if you're new to sex semen or you haven't used before, you use some sex semen, you're using conventional semen, and you're using dairy beef from day one. And selecting your cows, as I said, from the start of the breeding season that are superior in genetics, and they will give you your best chance of getting the best quality calf for the following season as well. So there's a number of factors that have to be played out, but it's definitely sex semen has taken off this year. We've seen that right across the country, but yet there is still a very strong emphasis on conventional semen as well to produce heifer calves.
And Shane, is there ever the question maybe asked if sex semen were to continue in its popularity and we were going to see close to even 100% sex semen use on our dairy herd, where is Progressive Genetics going to select their dairy sires from then? Because essentially you're following after the conventional semen you sell for male calves to bring into stud. I think I read up possibly Holland, though I'm not sure on it, are gone that way. of all sex semen, and as opposed to buying bulls, they actually buy heifers and take IVF flushes from 7 to 10 months to breed their bulls that way. Like, is that ever going to come into the question in Ireland, do you think?
Yeah, because it definitely, because sex semen has created challenges, and you're right in what you're saying for the future of the breeding program and the future of genetic gain in Ireland. It's not going to be as straightforward as it was because of the use of sex semen. Because if you take it, every farmer is selecting their best cows for sex semen, and that thing will be the best genetics. So you're not getting the opportunity to get a bull calf in cases. So that is a challenge. I suppose where's the future going? We actively contract mate particular cows of interest, and we ask dairy farmers to breed these cows to conventional semen because they're of interest from a genetic merit perspective. So that is something that has ongoing. But as the level of sex semen increases, which it's hard to know where that will bottom out, to be honest with you, it's we've had a massive increase over the last 2 or 3 years, but at some point it will stabilize on farms. Now, will we hit like the UK, hitting 90% sex semen? I'm not sure. They're a different system, where we are so concerned over our 6-week calving pattern. We have to be conscious of that in terms of the fertility performance has to be optimum, and sex semen, as I said, is it's about 7% less than the conventional in terms of conception rate. So that still is a bit of an obstacle to overcome. Now we can get around it by pre-selecting our cows in terms of body condition score and selecting our cows carefully, but it still is a challenge. But I suppose the future from a breeding perspective, I would say yes, there we would be looking at embryo work in terms of identifying elite females that would be of interest and performing flushing. I suppose again there's a huge success of it in terms of that, so all that has to be teased out and see where we go. But definitely other countries around the world, in America and the Dutch, as you mentioned, are actively involved in that. And I suppose, yeah, it's the direction that we need to start looking at, and we need to see where that fits into our model. And again, is it feasible as well to actually run programs like that? And are we going to get the return to give? Because at the end of the day, the farmer wants genetic gain, and there's no point us going down this road if it's not going to deliver genetic gain for the farmer, whether it be dairy or whether it be beef as well.
Yeah, and I suppose you mentioned that 7% difference that's still there between sexed AI and conventional. Like, can that gap be bridged with technologies? Do you think like we can have sex semen that will ultimately have a higher conception rate through what you're doing through your labs, or is it maxed
Yeah,
out
so
at the minute?
well, we have to revert back to the published research and the trials, and for us to confidently say that, we'd have to run a detailed study to say that it is superior. That I can never see it passing out conventional because of the processing of it and that, but there definitely is being developments in terms of the diluent and what's been used for the semen for conception rates. But the big benefit I'm seeing on farmer and what he or she is doing in terms of their selection criteria around the cows. When sex semen first started off, from my memory, people were buying 20, 30 straws, and they were just using it at the start of the season on any cow that showed heat, and that's not the correct way to do it. We have to be more selective on it. I say that we need to identify our elite genetics for genetic gain in the dairy herd, but I also say we need to identify our sires that are suitable for sex semen. And what I mean by that is that they have to be in good condition. They have to at least cycle once before the breeding season, and they need to be in good health status in terms of good level of performance, and give them the best chance of going back in calf. And now we should be doing that for conventional semen anyway, but just when it comes to sex semen, the advice is to be more particular about that. If we take the timing of the AI, that is crucial. We've seen that from on farms, and there's a bit of trial work as well to suggest the timing of the AI is very critical in terms of so it really is important that the advancement, I suppose, of technology in terms of collars, they are helping that. We are seeing that farmers are using collars that can really identify when the cow comes on heat to when a cow is going off heat, and when they use the right time to use sex semen or conventional semen. That's where they're getting the good results. in terms of sex semen performance. So it's multifactorial. And then it comes back to the handling of the semen as well, which was one of the key things that came out of the research trials that were done, is that the careful handling that needs to happen around temperature thawing out, around the number of straws that one technician should have should be carrying at one time, and the critical important factors for getting the cow served as quickly as possible.
Yeah, very good. And I suppose back to the dairy beef side, new this year from you is heterospermic semen. I suppose firstly, if you explain what it is and then its advantages.
Yeah, so that's we were involved in a trial that was carried out this year with UL and UCD, and there was a number of AI companies also involved in that trial. So heterospermic trial is basically there's multiple sires in one straw, and I suppose there's some indications, or this is why we have to do the trial, to say that there is better conception rates being achieved when we put these three sires together in the one straw. So I suppose the complexity of the heterospermic semen is that you're putting three sires in one straw, and without a national genotyping program, which we are in that space now, it's an unknown in terms of what calf you're going to end up with when that cow calves. So the first step is that it achieves higher conception rates, and that is where we need to test it out, and that's why we were participating in this trial this year to see, okay, well, if we put our three bulls in one straw, and particular for this trial, it was three Angus or Herefords, three Herefords. So it was getting to test, is there a higher conception rate being achieved by putting the three bulls in one straw versus the bull in a single straw. And that, look, time will tell in terms of the results from that. We won't know until the next calving season, because, as I said, the trick of this is to identify what calves are actually coming from the straw. And the only way to do that is by genotyping. So next spring, February, March next spring, after these cows are calving down from these heterospermic trial straws, we will see, we'll get the data back in terms of what calves are actually born from the straws, and then we'll be able to relate it back to in terms of conception rates and see was there actually a difference in it. So look, from a farmer's perspective, anything that achieves higher conception rate is definitely welcome. There's obviously a cost associated with it, so that has to be factored in. But I think, even cost aside, if there is higher conception rates to be achieved, I think a lot of farmers will be interested in it. But again, it is a critical part of the trial, is to justify, is there an actual better conception rate to be achieved? So we'll have to wait and see how next spring turns out, and we'll have some evidence to say whether there is advantages of the heterospermic or not.
Very good. All to be seen yet. I suppose maybe another pillar of it is the increasing use of beef stock bulls amongst dairy herds. Like, in the past we were maybe using even a Frisian stock bull, as we just didn't, I suppose there was just demand there for dairy stock still. But I mean, a lot of farmers would sooner maybe invest in say an Angus bull for the last 6 weeks of breeding than still be AI and cows when it's all going to be beef anyway. Does that kind of rule out the need for say beef semen later in the breeding season, or do you see that yet, Shane?
Look, that's always been the way, to be honest. It's always been the traditional kind of way of breeding, is that you breed AI for 6 weeks and then you off the stock bull for 6 weeks. What we've seen in Ireland over the last number of years is herd size has got bigger, and I suppose where herd size gets bigger, bull power becomes an issue, and that's where we're seeing I suppose a slight move away from the stock bull until probably the last 3 weeks of the breeding season, if that makes sense, because there can be so much pressure on a stock bull, especially in a large scale herd, that he'll end up getting burnt out, and you end up with a gap in your calving season the following year. So we're not seeing a major shift towards stock bull, to be honest with you. We're actually seeing it increasing. So more farmers are using dairy beef in the first 6 weeks, and also in that last 6 weeks as well. And I suppose what we would see often is farmers are AIing along with the stock bull, just to try and not to let him get burnt out, because that is a real problem for dairy farmers. Is that, say if you've 200 or 300 cows, realistically, if your conception rate is around 60%, your 6-week calving rate on average national figure is about 67%. So you're looking at anything from 25% of your herd that has still been bred in the last 6 weeks. And the larger the herd, how many cows can one stock bull actually look after or serve? So we just have to be very conscious of that. And that's my advice to farmers, is to potentially, be mindful of that, and, that the bull doesn't get burnt out. Also, it's so important for stock bulls to be fertility tested, that they are starting off right into the breeding season, that there isn't a blip, because we often see it is that where stock bulls are introduced at the start of that 6-week period, we can see a delay in calving because they just weren't ready for the field, I suppose. So it's something that we advise farmers on, and we encourage them, but we're seeing the shift, I suppose, towards dairy beef. And again, because they can mix things up with, you buy an Angus bull, you're limited to Angus calves, where the advantages of AI is that you can buy multiple breeds in straws, and you can breed accordingly to what your preferences are, depending on the cow that's in question as well. So I mentioned Belgian Blue being used, and the places where Belgian Blue is being used is on the right type of cow. You can't go and use Belgian Blue right across your herd, but there is mature cows in every herd that are capable of calving, and the blues that we're using now are easy calving in comparison to the more traditional Belgian Blues. So we see massive wins there to add value to the calf crop at different stages of the year as well. So it's multifactorial again, in terms of the lots of factors can influence the decision of using a stock bull or using AI along with the stock bull as well.
Yeah, very good. So to bring in a bit of the whole nitrates debate, could I get you to maybe describe, say, the common dairy cow type we have in Ireland today? An observation then is how this may change over the next, let's say, 5 years, like all in terms of breed makeup and EBI sub-indexes that would be most desirable. Like with nitrates, banding, decreased dairy expansion, and increased beef use all being accounted for.
Yeah. So the idea, or the type of cow that I suppose we're most commonly used to dealing with now is your typical high EBI animal. And what I mean by high EBI, they have high economic breeding index, and they're probably around live weight anything from 550 to 600 kilos live weight. So they're a decent sized cow, to be fair. Their genetic makeup is driven mainly on fertility, and we have seen that shift over the years. Traditionally, Ireland was very focused on, prior to the EBI, Ireland was very focused on a cow that had a lot of milk and could produce large amounts of volume, but they didn't have the fertility, and that was the challenge with that type of system. So the EBI has developed and advanced the situation to, we're now looking at an animal that's 550, 600 kilos live weight. They're superior in terms of fertility sub-index and fertility performance on the ground, and also they're driven towards efficiency around converting grass to milk, and in particular kilos of milk solids, because the majority of our system is Ireland are paid on kilos of milk solids. We're paid A plus B minus C, so that's an important factor for a farmer when they're making their breeding decisions. They want to drive that on as much as possible. So when they're sitting down looking at the bulls, they want bulls that are going to deliver higher fat and protein within a compact calving season as well. So their fertility and kilos of milk solids, and also health. The health of our sires is becoming very important, in particular around TB resistance and that. So the health is important from a lameness, somatic cell count, and also TB as well. So we're seeing them parameters coming into the mix from a farmer selection point of view. So that is the ideal type of cow. It's a cow that's robust. It's a cow that's going to go back and calf. It's going to have longevity, give good lifetime performance, and going to deliver a higher profit for the farmer than the previous generations as well. So it's a robust cow, to be fair. Now, again, there is systems in Ireland that are using different types of cows and getting on fine. There's no question about it. But there's different levels of management, and there's different types of management that allow them genetics and allow them types of cows to I suppose to drive on in them systems. So there's no one shoe for everyone. Everyone has their own preference and what they want to do, and that's okay. and it's up to them then to manage that within their own system to deliver what they want at the end of the day. So that's the ideal type of cow. The latter in your question then, sorry, on the rest of it was?
Yeah, I suppose maybe we talked about dairy beef, like we have a beef sub-index on dairy cows. Is that something farmers are looking at? Can we increase that without a compromise on all them traits you've talked about?
Yeah, so in our breeding program, that is a trait of interest, and we will start looking at that a couple of years ago, to try and get that ideal cow that has a good beef sub-index, that's going to give us a good beef calf without, as you touched on, like we are seeing them. There is the outliers popping their head up every so often. They're not the making up the whole population, but we are definitely seeing some of our sires in this season in particular, our younger bulls coming through. They have a decent beef sub-index, which is definitely going to help the situation around calf quality. And you can imagine if you're using a good beef quality sire, dairy beef sire on a good beef sub-index cow, you're going to get a superior calf as well. So that is one thing that we are very conscious of, and we have been over the last number of years. And yeah, we're looking at it from a futuristic point of view to see, can we identify these sires that have it all basically, and we can not compromise on anything for the farmer.
On the banding discussion then, is that forcing a lot of farmers one way or the other? Like, I suppose as you maybe said prior to maybe quotas, we were looking at, a volume cow, leaving or banding to be in place then. A lot of us would have been in the higher band. Are farmers now pushing into that middle band, say under 6,500 litres? Are they even pushing into the first band, maybe using more of a crossbred cow, or is there a shift that way, Shane?
We're actually seeing it going the other way. There'll be more interest to push themselves from the 6.5 up into the higher band. And again, it's a funny one that, because the decisions you make today in terms of breeding won't have an impact for 5 years by the time you get your calf on the ground, by the time that calf matures into a lactating animal as well. So the banding is in now, and farmers are being critiqued on the volume of milk they're selling and the average number of cows that they have. So the banding is there. We are seeing guys looking to push that a little bit into the higher bands, because they're being forced to carry less cows, and they obviously want to sustain their income and sustain the level of profitability from their land base as well. So but my advice on it will be to farmers is, you want to increase volume or increase production. The first thing you need to look at is fertility. And if there is room for improvement in fertility, that's where I would be improving or selecting my sires to get the next improvement in terms of milk volume. Because days of milk is everything in terms of getting more volume from your herd. And that's where I see the biggest gains outside of the whole banding conversation, is that focus on the fertility of the herd. I've seen herds go from 450 kilos milk solids to 550 kilos milk solids purely by focusing on fertility alone, not changing the type of cow that they want in terms of the PTAs for milk volume or kilos milk solids, but actually refining the fertility of the herd and breeding that cow and getting that cow calving down every 365 days allows for long lactations and allows for more milk to be produced. And we're seeing more milk being produced across the lifetime of that animal. So that's the starting place from my perspective, is to look at the fertility sub-index. If you're trying to increase volume on the farm, start with your fertility and work off that, because there's plus milk bulls, in situations, and again it comes back to the system. If we want to push ourselves into a higher band, you think automatically, they're going to go for plus 300, plus 400 kg milk bulls and push my volume up. But that actually, from history and learnings over the before the EBI, when you go chasing volume, your fertility is jeopardized, and you actually end up producing no more kilos of milk solids or no more milk, because you're working against it, because cows aren't calving in the same pattern that you would have at that lower demand. So there's a bit of a catch there. The lower bands, we're not actually seeing that. We're actually seeing a shift away from I suppose a traditional crossbred and Jersey type of breeding. I suppose reason being is that we have a robust EBI system. We have a robust animal now that, as you said, that can give it all. And the challenge with the crossbred and the Jersey is again around that beef quality calf and the quality of calf. So there's no taking away from it. The crossbred animal is a superior animal in terms of their ability to perform genetically and also produce milk, and they're very efficient. But there is, I suppose, a number of negatives, and the beef calf is definitely one that stands out. And I don't like talking about that, but it's just one that does hinder the systems a little bit in terms of the cull cow factor, and also the calf in terms of, is there a home for that calf? And we have to be very conscious of that for the sustainability of our industry, to make sure that there is a home for our beef crop calves that comes off the dairy herd as well.
And I suppose just finally on our derogation, I suppose Ireland being maybe the only, or if not one of very few countries in Europe that still have a derogation, like I suppose how detrimental could you see the proposed drop from 220 kilos organic nitrogen a hectare to 170 kilos?
Yeah, I think as a big obstacle and a big challenge from our agri industry, not just our dairy industry. It's I wouldn't like to see it go. And a lot of dairy farmers wouldn't like to see it go either. To be fair, look at it. It'll have a huge impact on the industry in terms of the economic value of what agriculture is delivering for Ireland. It'll have huge pressures on other sectors as well, because the only thing that's going to happen if that 120 goes to 170 is you're going to have a higher demand on land, because people who want to sustain their living and their income from the businesses they've built up. And there's been huge investment in infrastructure, capital investment on sheds, parlours, facilities, so that all has to be paid for. And nitrates to 170, we're taking cows out of the equation, and we're not going to be able to pay the bills as quickly as we would like. So it's going to have huge pressure on the agri industry, from increasing the price of land, from I suppose the leasing of land to the purchasing of land. And we've already seen inflated prices in the last 2 or 3 years in that area already, which is, in my view, it's getting unsustainable in terms of the prices that are being paid for land on leases and also for purchases. So it's going to put huge pressure on the agri industry, and I think it'll be a disappointing or sad day, the day that it is removed, because I think Ireland, as its nature, has embraced a lot of technologies and can deliver on what is asked upon. So I would say that it should be the dairy farmer or the Irish farmer should be given a chance to improve, because it's been critiqued on water quality, which we have to question as well in some ways. The data there, is it reflective of the whole thing, of what's actually happening? So I think the opportunity, if there is an opportunity to be given to the farmer of Ireland to give them a chance to improve on what is needed to be improved, to protect the derogation, protect the sustainability of our industry. We all want to produce food sustainably, and I think Ireland, above all countries in the world, can do that. Reducing our nitrates will reduce cow numbers, will reduce our output. It'll only open the door to other countries around the world to produce milk and produce beef, which will come at a higher cost from an environmental perspective. So I think Ireland, the ag industry needs to give Irish farmers the chance to improve, the chance to work with it, and to support it going forward. And if our industry, the AI industry, has seen anything that is over the last 15, 20 years, when the adoption of EPI was taken on, and it was a change at the start, but then farmers fell in behind it because they could see the benefits of it. And I think if you put something in front of an Irish farmer and you can show them the benefits of it, I think they will embrace it and they will drive it on as well. So I think it would be a shame to see it lost. It'll have a huge impact on the industry, but I think it can be. We don't have to lose it. I think if we're given the time to change what needs to be done and to work on it going forward.
Yeah, no, that's well said there, Shane. So, no, that's all. Thanks very much for your time, Shane. Enjoyed that. So, thanks very much, and all the best.
That's all we've time for on this month's episode of the Angus to the Fore podcast. For more information on what was discussed on this podcast, visit progressivegenetics.ie. As mentioned earlier in this episode, we are now one of 5 finalists in the Certified Irish Angus Beef Schools competition, sponsored by ABP and Keepack. To follow our project to date, access to our innovative bull finder, videos, new podcast episodes, news and much more, visit angustothe4.com. As always, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you back here again soon.